Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Scruff's Garage. So today's video is about what replaced my Corvette. So we'll spin around, and here she is. This is a 2007 Prince LSR. So Pat Prince was a race car builder. So he built a series of these cars for racing. Would have been originally in the SCCA class, a D sports racer, DSR. That class is gone now. It got consolidated into the P2 class, one of the prototype classes, or within NASA would probably fall into STU, the unlimited class. It started life as a Formula Continental, so that's what the main chassis is from. It's a Formula Continental chassis, and then it has been modified. So this is a 2008 GSXR 1000 motorcycle engine. So that's where the power comes from. This engine was built by Realtek. Compression's been raised, and a few things have been done internally. According to Realtek, should be making around 205 horsepower at the crank. It is a chain drive setup. You can see the remote reservoir Penske's. Obviously runs racing slicks. And these are just the one big center lock wheel, which is kind of cool. Makes you feel like a real race car. Fuel cell is under the seat. The seat, if you want to call it a seat, is like a foam field. They poured the foam around you and just kind of moisture your body within the cockpit. Obviously, a removable steering wheel. Has paddle shifters with the what they call a flat shift setup. So other than taking off in first gear, from a stop taking off in first, you'd use the clutch. Beyond that, everything is a clutchless, no lift, upshift and downshift, which is pretty exciting on the track. Has a dash 2 dash and data logger system. The harnesses, so I've got a battery tender wired into it so I can keep it charged, and obviously the electrical disconnect, so if you had an accident, a corner worker or a safety person can disconnect power to the car, shut anything off that could be running. When I first got it, I don't know how well you can see in there, see the battery. I rebuilt that battery tray and I replaced the battery. I've done one track day with it and I had some battery problems. And I bought a replacement battery at the track, and turns out it was a 3-year-old new battery. So it had all kinds of problems because that's obviously a tiny battery. It's only 9 pounds. And so those don't like to sit for long periods of time without being used, so I had to replace it yet again. But I rebuilt the battery box or the battery tray, and it has a new battery. So hopefully that and the battery tender will help keep it topped off and ready to go when the weather warms up and we can do track days again. But obviously a lot of downforce, big wing, and then so you can see the front. Let me get a little better angle for you. So this car only has 1.75 inches of ground clearance, which makes loading and unloading into a trailer a significant ordeal. I'll do a separate video on my enclosed trailer and the winch setup that I rigged up so that I can load and unload this car by myself when I go to the track. I don't know how well you'll be able to see, but through the tunnels here on the front of the car, they go straight through. So what you're looking at all the way back is the radiator. So you see the radiator there, obviously. So it's a straight shot. As the air comes in, comes through here, the radiator sets along in here, and then the air flows out the back. Same thing on the other side. See if I can get around the back of the car. But the auxiliary engine oil cooler is mounted on this side, but the same design where air comes in from the front through the tunnel, goes through the oil cooler, and then flows out the back. All right, so I'll tell you what, I'll fire it up for you just so you can hear how it sounds. Okay, there you go. Obviously, when it's warming up, I'm not going to cold rev it. At idle, not too terribly loud. The neighbors certainly know that it's running. But I can tell you at wide open throttle, 10, 11, 12,000 RPMs, it really screams. Consumables on the car are relatively inexpensive. Obviously, these are 13-inch wheels, so the tires aren't too terribly expensive. The car is lightweight, so the whole thing weighs under 1,000 pounds. So it's not particularly hard on tires or even brake pads. Brake pads, see if you can see. I bought a new set of brake pads. This is actually for the rear, but you can see they're tiny brake pads, and they're just the little center pin type, so really easy to change. So before my next track day, I've got a new set of front brake pads and rear brake pads. I'm going to do that. Should last me all season. When I bought the car, I've got several sets of tires and wheels that came with it. Get that out of the way. So a spare set of wheels. These are actually rain tires. I'm not going to race the car competitively, so I have no intention of being out in the rain in this type of a car. It's just not fun. So at some point, I'll probably sell or get rid of these the rain tires. I've got another set of tires, another set of wheels that are in my race car trailer. So I may pare down. I may keep these wheels so I have a backup set that matches what's on the car in case I were to maybe damage or bend a wheel. But I've got probably more sets of tires and wheels than I really need, and they take up room here in the garage. And then obviously, I didn't point it out before, but I've got the rear bodywork taken off. That's what you see over here, and it comes off pretty easily. There are some latches there and there, and the bodywork just sits down for that rear section. Really lightweight, easy to take off, but it is a two-person job. You know, obviously if you were trying to lift it, it's just fiberglass. So you would crack it if you tried to just pick it up from one side. But other than that, fairly easy to come off. Same thing with the front nose cone section. So you can see the kind of the body line there. So the whole front nose comes off. There's some latches there. There are some Zeus fasteners there on the bottom, there, and then some alignment pins in the front. And this whole nose cone can be removed. And it makes it easier to get to the like brake fluid reservoir and the steering rack and some components like that for when you need to service it. And then a bit more work with some of the other components. Body work will come off with a little bit more work as well. Of course, a logical question is, well, how do you jack up the car if it only has 1 3/4 inch of ground clearance, particularly in the front? Because even when you take off this front nose cone, the aluminum splitter that you see there, it actually stays on the car. So you don't gain any ground clearance taking off this front nose cone. But fairly common to Formula cars and sports racers and that sort of thing is this style jack. So you can see it's obviously this one's very well worn, but it's low clearance. And so when you have the pipe here, when you pull back on this, the platform raises and you can pick up the front or the rear of the car fairly easy. And it's so lightweight, it doesn't have to be a hydraulic jack. Just pull back on the lever and you can pick up the car, and you can get it up high enough to get maybe the rear tires off or the front tires off and that sort of thing. So as I mentioned, my plans for the car, I'm not going to race it competitively, at least not at this point in my plans. My goal with it is to have a dedicated track car, fairly low cost to run, fairly low cost in maintenance and that sort of thing. Relatively easy to work on. Obviously, all the engine components, suspension bits, you can just sit here on a stool and get to. The one maybe expensive piece of it, engine runs on 100 octane race fuel. Now, obviously, it's fairly decent on fuel. But the last time I bought 100 octane at VIR back in November for the track day, it was $9.38 a gallon, which is fairly pricey. But it's just kind of the name of the game. It's a trade-off, expensive fuel, but cheap brake pads, that sort of thing. But like I said, my goal with it is just to be a track day car. I wanted something that was dedicated, set up, does one thing, goes to the track. It is faster than I'll ever be able to really extract out of it. Should be a lot of fun to drive. It's very go-kart-esque. The one track day I did do with it, like I said, had some battery problems, so I didn't get to turn very many laps in it. But I can tell you, it is a visceral experience. It is more like a go-kart than it is like my Corvette. I'm having to learn to dial back my steering inputs. It is so direct and so immediate of a turning response that I have to put less steering input into it. Corvette, you kind of muscle it in. This, you don't muscle it in. You have to be very precise with your inputs because you can overdo it. It sounds silly to say, but you almost can drive off the track with it. Previous owner installed a new fire suppression system. I don't know how well you can see that down there, but that was nice. There are nozzles in various locations. There's a couple in the cockpit and a couple back here on the engine and pointed towards the fuel cell. That hopefully, if there's ever a fire, buys me a few seconds to get out. Because I can tell you, getting in and out of this car, it is very claustrophobic. You really shoehorn yourself down into that cockpit. With the steering wheel in place, you can't get in or out of the car. So it's a removable steering wheel. So you have to take the steering wheel loose to give you your legs room to get down in there. But once you're in, you are a very, very snug fit. So there we go. That's the gist of the car. Certainly more to come as I'm working on different things with this car. I'll post some additional videos, and hopefully as the weather warms up, I'll get a chance to take it to the track and post some, maybe some in-car video, turning some laps at VIR or something like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I'll try to answer anything that I can. I'm still certainly learning about this car. This is something new to me. So as always, thanks for tuning in to this edition of Scruff's Garage. We'll see you next time.